Hello friends, my name is Cindy and I am one of the children's librarians at Portland Public Library in Portland, Maine. And today for our learning video, we are going to read Who Was Leonardo da Vinci? And it's by Roberta Edwards and illustrated by True Kelly. And on the back it says, who was Leonardo da Vinci? A lonely little boy? A house guest of the King of France? An inventor, musician, engineer, scientist, and painter of the world-famous Mona Lisa? All of the above. Find out more about the real Leonardo da Vinci in this fun and exciting illustrated biography. So, some people are enormously talented, and then there is Leonardo da Vinci. He lived at a time when there were many extremely talented people all around him. Even so, he stood out. He could draw and paint better than anyone. One of his paintings, the Mona Lisa, is the most famous painting in the world. He was a scientist hoping to unlock the secrets of the natural world. He was an engineer, an inventor. He designed a bicycle that would have worked 300 years before the first bike was ever built. He was an excellent athlete, a fine musician, and he was handsome. Although there are no known paintings of him, whenever people of the day described him, they always mentioned his good looks. I want to work miracles, he stated, yet he often met with failure, and while he could be charming, he mistrusted almost everyone. He was a loner. He had no family of his own. For 16 years, he didn't even have a home of his own. By his own standards, Leonardo was a disappointment. He never reached the goals he set for himself. His greatest works were left unfinished. Nevertheless, what he did achieve in 67 years still sets the standard for human excellence. It's hard to imagine someone doing better. Now we have a picture of Leonardo's Lyra da Braccia, which is some kind of musical instrument. Chapter 1, An Unwanted Boy. And here's a picture of his town. On April 15th, 1452, in a tiny hill town in Italy, a baby boy was born. His father was a well-to-do businessman, Ser Pierro. His mother, Caterina, was a poor young peasant girl. We don't even know her last name. Their baby was named Leonardo. Because the town he came from was called Vinci, he was known as Leonardo da Vinci. That means Leonardo from Vinci. Leonardo's parents weren't married. His father was ashamed of the baby and left him with his mother. You can see his town is right there. This is Italy. It looks sort of like a boot. Ser Pierro married another woman, someone more respectable, and started a new family. He moved nearby to the busy city of Florence. Caterina did not want to keep her baby either. She cared for him for only a year or two. Then she too married someone else and began a new family. So what was to become of little Leonardo? Ser Pierro's answer was to leave the baby with his parents, but Leonardo's grandparents were old. His grandfather was 85 at the time. At their age, what did they want with a toddler? Still, they took him in. They fed him, clothed him, and gave him a home, but little else. No one loved the little boy. The only person who showed interest in him was an uncle named Francesco. Francesco was a farmer, and he loved the beautiful countryside around Vinci. He would take long walks in the hills, which were covered with olive trees. Leonardo would go with him. It was there on these walks that Leonardo grew to love the natural world, the rolling shapes of the hills, the silvery leaves of the olive trees, the flight of birds, and the soft, misty sunlight. Everywhere he went, Leonardo took a little notebook with him. He made drawings of anything that interested him: a plant, ducks in a stream, flowers, an insect, some cows. Paper was very valuable, but Leonardo was lucky. Because of his father's business, there was always a supply. It was one of the most important things Ser Pierro ever gave his son. Even when he was a young boy, Leonardo had an amazing talent for drawing. Drawings seemed to flow out of his fingers onto the paper. His rabbits and birds didn't look like drawings. They looked alive. He understood the beauty of nature. He also knew its dangers. When he was only 4 years old, a terrible hurricane struck the countryside. Farms were destroyed, and many people were killed. Then, when he was 10, the river Arno flooded Florence. Leonardo watched the storm and saw the flood. He never forgot either. All his life he drew pictures of moving water. Water was a source of life for animals and plants. It was also a source of destruction. Leonardo wanted to understand both sides of this force and to control its power. His father must have been aware of his son's gift for drawing. All it would have taken was one look at one sketch. Ser Piero was a practical man. He knew Leonardo's choices in life were limited. Because Ser Piero never married Caterina, Leonardo could not attend university. He could not be a lawyer and businessman like his father. He could not become a doctor. But he could work in one of the art studios in Florence. Being an artist was a respectable trade. Ser Piero decided to take Leonardo to the city. There, he arranged for him to live and work with a famous artist. His name was Andrea del Verrocchio. This was certainly the best thing Ser Piero ever did for his son. It changed Leonardo's life forever. Chapter 2, the art studio. And here's a picture of Florence. During the 1400s, Florence was the most important, most exciting city in all the world. It was one of the 5 city-states in what is now Italy. Being a city-state meant Florence had its own government. It was called the Signoria. But for many years, the city was really ruled by one rich, very powerful family called the Medici. The Medici men were art lovers. They built beautiful homes and churches and libraries in Florence. They wanted works of art to go inside all those buildings. Andrea del Verrocchio was one of the most famous artists working in Florence at the time. He had plenty of jobs. Leonardo was very lucky to study under such a master. Leonardo was an apprentice. He was 12 at the time he went to Verrocchio's studio. All apprentices were boys. No girls were allowed. The apprentices were not paid, but they were given free room and food and a little money. At the studio, they learned to become artists. For the first year, they had classes in drawing. After about 7 or 8 years, they knew how to paint pictures, create frescoes, paintings done directly onto walls, make statues out of marble or bronze, design pottery, silverware, objects of gold, and even design buildings. This is the Medici Palace. Apprentices started at the bottom and worked their way up. They swept the studio, ran errands for the older artists, and cleaned up at the end of the day. And here's a picture of the studio. There were no art supplies stores, so Leonardo and other apprentices learned to make paintbrushes and paints. For the brushes, hairs from different animals were stuck into wooden handles. Hog bristles, for instance, made good hard brushes. Squirrel fur was used for softer brushes. The artists painted with a kind of paint called tempera. Its base was egg, not oil. Painting with oil paints first started in the Netherlands, that's Holland. In Italy, artists did not start using oil paint until the 1470s. Leonardo was taught to make colors. Blue came from grinding a stone called lapis lazuli into dust. Red came from crushing tiny beetles. Yellow came from the juice of one kind of berry. And here, is a picture of the potions that they make their paint from. At that time, canvas was not used for paintings. An artist painted on a flat panel of wood instead. But the wood had to be prepared first. Boiling it kept it from splitting or cracking later on. Then glue was brushed on. After that, a coat of fine plaster called gesso was put on. This gave the panel a nice smooth surface for painting. All these steps were jobs for the apprentices. Verrocchio's studio was always busy. At any one time, the master and his assistants would be working on many different projects. Whatever Verrocchio's customers ordered, they'd make. As head of the studio, Verrocchio ran the business and drew up the contracts. The contract said exactly what the job was to be. For example, a statue of a soldier on horseback, how long it would take to finish it, how much it would cost, and what materials would be used. Marble was more expensive than wood. Using wafer-thin pieces of gold, called gold leaf, on a painting added to its cost, and only Verrocchio, the master, signed the works of art. Right away, Verrocchio saw that young Leonardo had special talent. He was a natural. So soon after he learned the basics of the trade, Leonardo was allowed to do more important work. Customers, or patrons as they were called, often gave religious paintings to one of the important churches in Florence. A painting might be of Mary and the baby Jesus in the manger with Joseph and the wise men and shepherds. Sometimes the patron would have his wife and himself put into the picture too. They might appear at the sides kneeling and praying. They were almost always smaller in size than the saints. On Sundays, when people came to church, they saw the beautiful painting of Mary and her baby and the patron who had paid for it. It was a lovely gift to the church. It also showed how rich and important the patrons were. Verrocchio received a commission to do a painting of the baptism of Jesus. In it, Jesus is standing in a rocky stream. St. John pours water over his head. At the left in the painting are two angels. Verrocchio himself painted almost everything except one of the angels. The angel is staring at Jesus in a way that shows he understands the importance of what he is watching. His face is sweet and wise. Leonardo painted the angel. He is so full of life that everything else in the painting looks stiff. Verrocchio realized Leonardo was a genius. He had talent like no one had ever seen before. Verrocchio understood that even he himself was not as good as his young apprentice. And here's a picture of them looking at the picture. The story is that after he saw Leonardos Angel, Verrocchio never took up a paintbrush again. He went on to do more statues and items of gold, but he never did another painting. And here's a picture of a statue of David by Verrocchio, circa 1473. Chapter 3, The Wider World. Leonardo stayed at Verrocchio's workshop a long time, 13 years. He became a master and a member of the guild, but he didn't move out or start a studio of his own. Perhaps Verrocchio's studio felt like a home to Leonardo, a place where he belonged and was wanted. Verrocchio was a kind master, and the two were probably quite close. Florence was also an exciting place to live. It was full of new ideas. It was also a city with books, lots of books. Until the mid-1400s, there were no printed books. Every book was copied by hand. Sometimes beautiful pictures were painted on the pages. The result was a work of art in itself, but it took a long time to make a single book. Then, around 1450, in Germany, a man named Johannes Gutenberg made a discovery. Here's a picture of him. He figured out how to build a printing press. It used letters made of pieces of steel. They could be moved around to create different words. An inked page of type could be printed onto paper many times. The Bible was considered the most important book, so the first title printed was the Bible. Very quickly, however, other books were printed as well. Books on math, books of maps, books by great thinkers of the past like Plato and Aristotle. With more books available, more people started learning to read. And here are people, or maybe it's Leonardo reading. As a child, Leonardo had been taught to read and write. He also knew simple math. But that wasn't enough for him. He wanted to learn about everything. He couldn't attend a university, but he could teach himself. So he started buying and collecting books. He continued to do this all his life. Artists needed math in order to make paintings look three-dimensional, or 3D. In the Middle Ages, paintings didn't look realistic. The people in them looked flat, like a king or a queen on a playing card. The buildings looked flat, too, like pieces of scenery in a play. But in the 1400s, an artist named Filippo Brunelleschi figured out a way to make paintings appear to have depth. A person looking at a painting could be tricked into thinking it was something in real space. Here's one of the Middle Ages paintings looking really flat. For instance, figures close up had to be much bigger than figures that were supposed to be far away. That is called painting them in perspective. A painter needed math to measure out the correct spaces for figures in the wood panels. Here's like a finished painting with perspective, and here's how they figured it out. Leonardo was a great painting because he followed the rules and then made rules of his own. There was magic in his fingers. He blurred hills and valleys in the background of a painting, just a little bit. They looked as if they were blending into the sky. This is exactly how faraway mountains appear to our eyes. Here's a picture of him with one of his paintings. They don't have sharp details or sharp outlines. In 1478, when Leonardo was about 26 years old, he completed a whole painting. It is a scene of the Annunciation. The Annunciation was when an angel appeared to Mary. He told her that she was going to have a son named Jesus. In Leonardo's painting, Mary is wearing clothing that a woman of the time would have worn. She is sitting in a walled garden. The landscape in the background looks very much like the hills of Vinci. The picture is very peaceful, and yet it also has drama. The Annunciation is only one of 13 paintings that experts are sure that Leonardo painted, and 3 of those paintings aren't finished. Here's the picture. Why did he paint so few? It wasn't that he died young. He lived well into his 60s. He wasn't lazy. He loved to work. For the Annunciation, he did dozens of drawings beforehand. Every curl of hair had to be right, every blade of grass. Perhaps Leonardo finished other paintings that may have gotten lost. Someday in the future, a Leonardo painting may be found in a tiny church or a castle. That would be a great gift for the whole world. But the fact is that Leonardo had trouble sticking with a project. If he got an order for a painting, the first steps interested him the most. He liked figuring out how to group the figures on a painting. That part was a challenge, like fitting together all the pieces of a puzzle. But finishing a painting, filling in the colors, wasn't as exciting. So very often he left his work undone. Also, his patrons could be fussy, and Leonardo did not like to be told what to do. He was a genius, after all. By 1478, Florence was not the peaceful, pleasant city it had been. The Medici family and other powerful families were at war with each other. There were plots to kill the Medici rulers. The streets were dangerous. Here's Leonardo not being interested in his painting. At age 30, Leonardo decided it was time for a change. He left Florence to go north to Milan, another city-state. There he hoped to work for the ruler of Milan, a scheming duke named Ludovico Sforza. And here's a picture of, he was in Florence, right there, and he went all the way up to Milan in Italy. And that is the end of our first part of Who Was Leonardo da Vinci? And we will read more tomorrow. I'm very excited to find out more. Are you? My name is Cindy. I am one of the children's librarians at Portland Public Library in Portland, Maine, and I thank you for stopping by. Bye-bye, friends.